Welcome back to UK Property Info, or Quantifying for. Before we dive into today's analysis, I need to ask you something important. If you find value in these videos, if they help you understand what's really happening in the property market, please take 2 seconds right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I put hours of research into every single video to bring you analysis you simply won't find anywhere else. And your subscription helps this channel grow so I can keep doing this work. We're building a community of informed property watchers, and I genuinely want you to be part of it. Now let me tell you about a crisis that's unfolding right now, that almost nobody is talking about. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this matters enormously for property prices, housing availability, and potentially your own plans to buy or sell in the coming years. Over the past 18 months, the UK house building industry has experienced a collapse of historic proportions. I'm not using that word lightly. Multiple major and medium-sized house builders have gone into administration. Housing starts have fallen by approximately 40% from their recent peaks. The pipeline of new homes being planned and constructed has shrunk to levels we haven't seen since the depths of the financial crisis in 2009. And yet, when you read the property headlines, when you listen to the mainstream commentary, this crisis barely gets mentioned. Everyone's focused on interest rates, on demand, on prices. Almost nobody is paying attention to the supply catastrophe that's building beneath the surface. Today I'm going to explain exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and what it means for everyone involved in the UK property market. Let me start with the raw numbers because they're genuinely shocking. In the past 18 months, more than 15 significant house building companies have either collapsed entirely, entered administration, or announced major restructuring that dramatically reduces their output. These aren't tiny operations. We're talking about companies that were collectively responsible for thousands of new homes every year. When you add up all the projects that have been cancelled, delayed, or abandoned due to builder failures, we're looking at approximately 50,000 homes that were supposed to be built, but now won't be. And that's just the direct impact of company failures. The indirect impact is even larger. If you're finding this analysis valuable, please hit that subscribe button. Right now, seriously, it takes 1 second and it makes an enormous difference to this channel. I research these topics for hours so you don't have to, and every subscriber helps me continue doing this work. Let's keep going because this gets even more important. Across the entire industry, builders who haven't collapsed are dramatically scaling back their operations. The major listed house builders have all announced significant reductions in their output targets. Land purchases have fallen off a cliff. New site openings have been delayed or cancelled. Workforce reductions have been announced across the sector. When you combine the companies that have failed with the cutbacks from surviving builders, the total reduction in new home supply is approaching 200,000 properties over a 3-year period compared to what was projected. 200,000 homes that families were counting on, that the housing market needed, that simply will not exist. Understanding why this is happening requires looking at the perfect storm of pressures that have hit the construction industry simultaneously. The first and most obvious factor is interest rates. When the Bank of England raised rates from near zero to over 5% in the space of 18 months, it didn't just affect mortgage holders. It devastated the economics of house building. Developers typically rely on debt financing to fund their projects. When borrowing costs tripled, project viability calculations that worked perfectly at 2% interest rates became mathematically impossible at 5 or 6%. Schemes that showed healthy profits on paper suddenly showed losses. The industry went from green light to red light almost overnight. But interest rates are only part of the story. Construction costs have exploded over the past 3 years. Material prices rose by 30 to 40% during the post-pandemic supply chain crisis. Labour costs have increased substantially as skilled workers become harder to find and retain. Energy costs for construction operations have risen dramatically. When you're trying to build homes at prices that buyers can afford, while your input costs have risen by a third and your financing costs have tripled, the mathematics simply don't work. Something has to give, and what's given is the volume of construction. The planning system has added another layer of difficulty. Despite government promises to streamline approvals, the average time to secure planning permission has actually increased. Local authority planning departments, starved of resources after years of budget cuts, are taking longer than ever to process applications. Section 106 obligations and infrastructure levies have increased costs further. Environmental requirements, while often necessary, have added complexity and expense. For builders already struggling with financing and construction costs, planning delays and requirements have become the final straw that makes projects unviable. Now here's where I need your help. If you want me to keep producing this kind of detailed analysis, I need you to subscribe to this channel. It's completely free, it takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps more than you might realise. Every subscriber signals to the algorithm that this content is valuable, which helps more people discover these insights. We're building something important here, a community of people who actually understand what's happening in the property market, rather than just reading headlines. Please hit subscribe and join us. Now let me explain why the builder collapse matters so much for the broader property market. The United Kingdom has a structural housing shortage that has been building for decades. By most estimates, we need to build approximately 300,000 new homes every year just to keep pace with population growth, household formation, and replacement of obsolete stock. In a good year, we've been building around 200,000. We were already falling behind by about 100,000 homes annually. Now, with the builder collapse reducing output dramatically, we're falling behind by 200,000 homes or more every single year. This shortage compounds. Every year that we underbuild, the accumulated deficit grows larger. The pressure on existing housing stock intensifies. The gap between supply and demand widens further. The immediate consequence is already visible in certain market segments. New build properties in desirable locations are becoming genuinely scarce. Buyers who previously had choice between multiple developments are finding that their options have shrunk dramatically. Builders who remain active can afford to be selective about the projects they pursue, focusing only on locations and price points where margins remain acceptable. Affordable housing delivery has been hit particularly hard because these projects typically operate on thinner margins that are most vulnerable to cost increases. First-time buyers hoping for new build starter homes are finding that such properties are simply not being constructed anymore. What happens next is where this analysis becomes critical for anyone involved in property. The immediate outlook for new build supply is bleak. Even if market conditions improve tomorrow, even if interest rates fell and construction costs stabilised, the industry cannot instantly recover. Skilled workers who have left construction during the downturn don't immediately return. Land banks that have been depleted take years to rebuild. Planning pipelines that have dried up require years to refill. The house building industry has momentum in both directions. It took years to reach peak output, and it will take years to recover from this collapse. We are looking at constrained new supply for at least the next 3 to 5 years, regardless of what happens to the broader economy. The implications for property prices are complex and often misunderstood. Many people assume that falling construction means prices will simply rise. The reality is more nuanced. In the short term, weak buyer demand due to high mortgage rates is suppressing prices despite supply shortages. But as demand eventually recovers, as it always does when rates stabilise and economic conditions improve, that demand will meet dramatically reduced supply. The supply-demand imbalance that drove prices higher during the pandemic will reassert itself, potentially with even greater force, because the supply side is now fundamentally impaired. For existing homeowners, this creates an interesting dynamic. Your property represents an increasingly scarce asset. Fewer new homes being built means less competition for your existing home when you eventually sell. Properties in established areas with good infrastructure may actually benefit from the new build shortage, as buyers who would have purchased new construction instead compete for existing stock. Location premiums may increase as the total pool of available properties shrinks. Right now, before you forget, please hit that subscribe button. I know I keep asking, but here's why it matters. This channel exists to give ordinary people the same quality of market analysis that professionals pay thousands of pounds to access. Every subscriber helps this channel grow, helps these videos reach more people, and helps me justify the hours of research that go into each one. If you've made it this far into the video, you clearly find this valuable. Please subscribe and become part of this community. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Now let me continue with what this means for different groups in the market. For first-time buyers, the builder collapse presents both challenges and opportunities. The challenge is obvious. Fewer new homes means less choice, particularly at entry-level price points, where developers have pulled back most aggressively. The Help to Buy scheme that drove so much first-time buyer activity into new builds no longer exists, removing another source of demand support that builders relied upon. Finding an affordable new build property will become increasingly difficult in the coming years. However, this pressure may ultimately redirect first-time buyers toward existing properties, where vendors, particularly older homeowners looking to downsize, may be more flexible on price and terms than corporate developers. For those looking to move up the property ladder, the builder collapse affects different segments differently. The executive home market has seen some of the sharpest pullbacks from developers, so finding a brand new 4 or 5 bedroom property may become challenging in many areas. However, the reduced competition from new builds may actually benefit sellers of larger existing homes who will face fewer alternatives competing for the same buyers. The second-hand market for family homes may see relative strength compared to the new build sector. For investors and landlords, the builder collapse has significant implications. The buy-to-let sector has been excluded from most new build incentives for years, so direct impact is limited. However, the overall supply shortage supports rental demand and rent levels. Fewer new homes being built means more people remaining in the rental sector for longer. Properties in areas where development has been most curtailed may see the strongest rental demand as housing options contract. The investment case for existing property may actually strengthen as new supply dwindles. The regional dimension of the builder collapse deserves attention. The impact has not been uniform across the country. London and the South East have seen significant pullbacks from major developers who were already struggling with land costs and affordability constraints even before the current crisis. The Midlands and North have seen relatively more resilience as lower land costs and better affordability maintained some project viability. However, some of the smaller regional builders who collapsed were particularly active in the north, so certain local markets have been disproportionately affected. Scotland's distinct planning and regulatory environment creates different dynamics, while Wales has seen some of the sharpest reductions in new housing starts relative to already low baseline levels. Government response to the builder collapse has been notably muted. Despite repeated promises about housing targets and building more homes, actual policy interventions to address the construction crisis have been minimal. Planning reforms remain stalled in political controversy. No emergency support has been provided to struggling builders. Infrastructure funding that might make marginal sites viable has not been forthcoming. The gap between political rhetoric about building more homes and practical action to enable that building has never been wider. Whatever government emerges from the next election will inherit a construction industry in profound distress with no quick fixes available. Please, if you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to UK Property Info right now. Hit the bell icon for notifications. Share this video with anyone you know who's trying to understand the property market. Leave a comment below telling me what property topics you want me to cover next. Your engagement is what keeps this channel alive and allows me to keep producing this research. I read every single comment, and your feedback genuinely shapes future content. Now let me give you my honest assessment of where this is heading. My view is that the house builder collapse represents a structural shift that will affect the property market for the remainder of this decade. We are not experiencing a temporary cyclical downturn that will quickly reverse when conditions improve. We are experiencing a fundamental restructuring of the industry that will permanently reduce its capacity to deliver new homes. Some collapsed builders will not return in any form. Surviving builders will operate more cautiously with smaller land banks and more conservative output targets. The industry that emerges from this crisis will be smaller, more concentrated, and less capable of responding quickly to demand increases. The shock that this triggers for the broader property market will unfold gradually rather than dramatically. Prices will not suddenly spike because of reduced new build supply. Instead, we will see a slow tightening of available stock across all segments. Competition for desirable properties will intensify as the total pool shrinks. Sellers will gradually regain pricing power as alternatives become scarcer. The buyer's market that emerged when rates rose will slowly transition back toward balance and eventually towards seller advantage as supply constraints bite harder. For anyone making property decisions in the coming years, Understanding this supply dynamic is essential. If you're waiting for more choice to appear in the market, that choice is not coming. If you're assuming that new build developments will provide alternatives to existing stock, those developments are being cancelled and delayed. If you're hoping that increased construction will ease price pressures, that construction is collapsing rather than increasing. The supply side of the equation is moving decisively against buyers, even as demand-side factors temporarily suppress activity. As we wrap up, let me give you the key takeaways. The UK house building industry is experiencing its worst crisis since 2009. Multiple builders have collapsed, and survivors have dramatically reduced output. Approximately 200,000 fewer homes will be built over the next 3 years than previously projected. Recovery will take years, even under improved conditions, because capacity has been permanently reduced. Property supply will remain constrained throughout the remainder of this decade. These dynamics support medium-term property values despite current market weakness. Anyone making property decisions needs to factor this supply reality into their thinking. Thank you for watching this UK property info analysis. If you found this valuable, and I genuinely hope you did, please do 3 things for me. First, hit the subscribe button right now. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it means the world to this channel. Second, turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Third, share this video with at least one person you know who cares about property. Together we can build a community of people who actually understand what's happening in the market, rather than just reading misleading headlines. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts on the builder collapse. Are you seeing this affect your local area? Are developments near you being cancelled or delayed? Your real-world observations help us all understand the true picture. Until next time, this is UK Property Info, bringing you the analysis you need to navigate a market in crisis. Please subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.